Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, we are going to check out Shells, a service that gives you a remote desktop in the cloud that you can access via a dedicated app or even in your web browser. So if you can think about the possibilities, that includes, but is not limited to, having an Ubuntu instance that you can access in your Firefox web browser, maybe Debian on your iPad, or possibly Windows on your phone. Now, obviously, this is a Linux channel, so we're going to focus on the Linux side of things, but it's a fun service, and I'm very excited to tell you guys all about it. Now, before we get started, I need to give you guys a quick disclaimer. Shells is not sponsoring this content at all. In fact, this particular video doesn't even have a sponsor of any kind attached to it. Selfishly, I just wanted to check out this service. It came across my radar recently, and I wanted to check it out. And as always, if I'm going to check something out, I may as well create a video about it because, well, why not? The only involvement that Shells has had with this content is that they've provided me a free month of service so I could check it out. And they also allowed me to call them up on the phone to ask them some questions about their service. But other than that, all of the comments and opinions in this video are all my own. So with that out of the way, let's check out Shells. First of all, a quick overview. Shells is a relatively new service, and from what I see, they have an impressive feature set already. On the screen right now is an Ubuntu instance, and it's fully operational right inside my Firefox browser. I can install apps, work on code, I can sync my files to it. I can do virtually everything I can do in a real Ubuntu instance right here in my browser, because this is a real Ubuntu instance in my browser. So for example, I can open up a terminal. I can run an app such as htop. As you can see there, I can open up a browser. So now I am running Firefox inside Ubuntu that's running inside Firefox. Now that's interesting. And best of all, they feature several distributions of Linux. Like I mentioned, I'm running Ubuntu currently, but I can easily change this shell instance to any of the operating systems that you see on the screen right now, such as Debian, Android, Windows, and so on. Some of the offerings are marked as beta and are offered at your own risk until the Shells team finishes testing them out. Both Android and Windows are marked as betas, for example, but Linux distributions such as Manjaro, Ubuntu, and Debian are considered fully stable. If you decide to check out this service, you can use any of the operating systems that you see here, and there's surely more to come along. Manjaro is a reasonably new offering here and is actually fully supported because they actually have a partnership with Manjaro themselves, which is pretty cool. And the team at Shells are actually contacting distribution maintainers directly to get support. So this is not a hack, they're actually looking for real support from the people that make these distributions possible. So you just saw Ubuntu running inside my Firefox web browser, but you don't actually have to use the web browser in order to interact with your Shells instance. They actually make dedicated client apps available for various platforms as well that you can use instead, which might even give you better performance. In fact, here on the downloads page, you can see a few of the platforms on which they make the app available. For example, right here you can see Windows, macOS, Linux, an App Store version, as well as an Android version. So what I'm going to do right now is download the Linux version. And the process is a bit different depending on the operating system on which you are downloading the client, but I'll go ahead and save the file. And it's already done. It's a pretty small download. Switching to a different workspace, I can open up my home directory. I can go into downloads, and we can see the client app right here available as a tarball for Linux. So I'm going to extract it. And here we have the app. So I'm going to click on it. I don't actually have to install it, which is pretty cool. I can just simply click on it. I'll click execute. And there it is. It's literally that easy. So I'll type in my email address. And then the password. Should be good to go. And now that I'm logged in, it's going to list all of the shells that I have available. And mine is simply called My Shell. Again, that's running Ubuntu, so I'm going to click on that. And here it is. Now notice my session is exactly where I left it when I was running it in my browser. And now I can interact with my instance without actually having to open my web browser. So for example, I'll just open up Firefox and I'll bring up the community page for my channel, which is a site that you should totally check out. Not a lot here yet, but let's get some discussions going, sign up for a new account, and let's talk about Linux. But I'm able to do all of this inside my browser. As another example, I can bring up GNOME software, or Ubuntu software as they choose to call it in the Ubuntu distribution, same difference. We have all these applications here, basically all the same applications that you have access to in an actual installation of Ubuntu because, well, this is an actual installation of Ubuntu. So for example, I'm going to install Slack. That's a pretty popular application for developers and software engineers out there that work for a company. As you can see, I can install this just like I'm able to do on any other installation of Ubuntu, but I have it right here in my Shells client or my web browser, depending on where I'm accessing this from. And now Slack is installed. I can go ahead and launch it. And there we go. I don't actually have a Slack account, but I just decided to install it because that's what all the cool kids are using today, apparently. But you get the idea. You have a remote desktop in the cloud, and you can use it to install your favorite apps. And now that desktop is remotely available wherever you happen to be. Now again, I'm currently using the shells.com app, which is available for all the popular platforms, but even if you are using a platform that is not featured, you can still use this. Basically, anything that has access to a web browser should have access to shells. For example, here's a shell running on a Pine phone. I bet you didn't think I was going to slip that into the video, did you? Now, the app is a bit on the minimalist side. There's not a ton of features right now, but the thing is, it does what it's supposed to do. It gives you access to your Shells instance, and I think that's all that really matters. I'd love to see some additional features added in, but the shells.com service is relatively new, and I'm actually surprised that they got this far in such a short amount of time. It is an impressive service so far. So far, I've been showing the service running on my ThinkPad, specifically an X1 Extreme Generation 1. But what I'm going to do right now is switch over to an iPad to show you what it looks like on that platform. And for the iPad, they have a dedicated app. It's one of the supported platforms for that app. And you install it the same way you install anything else on an iPad. You basically just open up the App Store, you search for the app, and then install it. Now, when I simply type Shells into the search bar, I wasn't able to find it. But when I typed Shells Desktop instead, the app came right up. Here it is right here. Once I launched the app on my iPad, it gave me a few pointers. Then I entered in my email address. And then after that, I entered in my password on the next screen. And then I saw my shell instance listed. As for me, I found that the interface on the iPad requires a bit of time to get used to. But if you have an iPad-compatible mouse and keyboard, which I don't, it should be just as easy as it is on a computer. I also had a chance to try out this service on my M1 Mac as well. It's actually been quite a while since I last used this computer, but I figured, why not give it a shot? The app installed very easily. It was a PKG file, and if you have ever used the Mac platform before, then you know exactly how to install a PKG. For those that don't know, you download it, you double-click on it, it asks you a series of questions, and then the app is installed. In fact, here in my application list, You can see the app right here, shells.app. I'll bring that up. And I'm already logged in, so the app looks pretty much the same as it does on Linux, but I'll just click on my shell, my cleverly named shells instance. And immediately you can see my shells instance right here. Again, this is my Ubuntu instance. It's all set and ready to go. So I can make this full screen. Let's do that. And now I have Ubuntu running on my M1 Mac, which is actually pretty cool considering that the M1 MacBook is relatively new, and getting any other operating system running on this computer as of right now is actually a bit of a challenge. So if you are wanting to get something like Ubuntu or some sort of x86 operating system running on your M1 Mac, yes, it's a challenge now, but we have shells.com. You could use the Shells service to go ahead and facilitate that. It just gives you one more option, which is pretty cool. And we can see that it's relatively smooth here. Now there is some lag that I'm experiencing, not in Shells, but for some reason the dock that I have attached to my MacBook, that's actually causing some slowdown, not specific to Shells. The entire macOS operating system is actually being slow for me. But we can see that I have Shells running right here in my M1 Mac, and the performance is not actually bad, Mac lag aside. It's running fairly well. So I'm just opening up some random applications, as you can see. But let's take a moment to actually appreciate what's going on here. The M1 processor is a brand new technology from Apple. It's not very easy, and in some cases it's actually impossible currently to get a full x86 operating system running in a VM on the M1. And that's considering the fact that the M1 is not an x86 processor, so of course there's going to be some difficulty. But here I have Ubuntu running, and I can actually run Windows as well through the shell service. So this actually could be a solution for some of you out there that are looking for a solution to get another operating system running on the M1. It's just another consideration that you now have. Now, before we go any further, we should have a quick chat about performance. Now, the thing is, there is going to be a bit of lag on any service that you run through a web browser because that's just the nature of the beast. So any app or operating system that is run through the cloud is going to have a little bit of slowdown when compared to something that runs on real hardware directly. That being said, the performance is actually really good. It actually surprised me how well these Shells instances actually run. They run faster than the instances I've created on my local Proxmox stack, for example. So yes, you are going to lose a little bit of performance, but depending on the type of workload that you are actually running, that might not matter to you. For example, if you are on a Linux machine running Microsoft Word in Windows, then does performance really matter? As long as it keeps up with your typing, you should be fine. And again, these instances actually run really well, which was a big surprise for me. So what I'm going to do right now is rebuild my Ubuntu instance and convert it over to Windows. I know, sacrilege, right? Oh my God, it's Windows. But every now and then, someone has an app that just doesn't run in Linux, and this might actually be a great way of running such an app without doing a dual boot or something like that. So what I'm going to do is check this box that basically tells it to erase my data, and then I'm going to select Microsoft Windows. Now notice that it says non-activated, more on that later, but I'll select that, scroll down here, click Next. And this is pretty cool. It actually will email you a validation code, and then you enter that validation code in here to complete the reinstall. You could basically reinstall your Shells instance anytime you'd like with any of the operating systems that are offered. And this just helps to protect that someone isn't coming behind you, shoulder surfing or something like that, and trying to pull a prank and delete your instance. So I type that in, and now the instance is rebuilding itself, and as soon as it's done, it's going to transform into Windows. Don't worry, I will change it back. But all jokes aside, it's actually a great thing to have Windows available, especially for Linux people, because that could protect you from a dual boot. And here we have a Windows instance running inside Firefox on top of OpenSSH. That's pretty cool. But let's try it out in the dedicated app. So I'll just switch over to another workspace. And here it is. So just like with any other shells instance, I can open up whatever applications I need to open up. So if I needed to run anything in Windows, I could do so right here from within this shell without having to dual boot. I know I've said that already, but let's not understate the value of this, because there's a lot of people out there that have 1 or 2 Windows apps that they're required to run for one reason or another, and sometimes they'll actually create a dual boot just for that reason, but this might actually save you from a dual boot. Now don't get me wrong, you're not going to be able to run your Steam games through this service because there's no actual GPU, or at least not a GPU that's powerful enough to handle the load that a game would actually put on the server. But it is what it is. It actually seems to work just fine. Now, one thing that I should point out though, close this here. Now notice that it says right here, Windows is not activated. The thing is, Windows on shells is considered a beta operating system, so there's more than likely some quirks that they need to iron out. And one thing I can definitely tell you is that the performance of Windows running on shells is not as good as Ubuntu or the other Linux distributions. But again, it's beta, so I'm not going to judge the performance of Windows just yet. Now my understanding is that the beta tag when it comes to Windows is supposed to be removed in a few weeks or so. So Windows will be considered a production stable service on shells very soon. And when it does reach production, this Windows is not activated message should actually go away. And that's another reason why it's beta, because there's no actual license. And they're working on what they need to work on to make that happen. But for now, you can basically consider this Windows instance a trial version of Windows 10 until it actually has a real license. But it is what it is. We are able to run Windows on our Linux systems without doing a dual boot, and that's worth its weight in gold in my opinion. And that alone is probably going to be helpful for quite a few people out there. So how much does a service like this actually cost? Well, there's 3 plans that you can choose from. You can actually create a custom plan as well. The $4.95 a month plan includes 1 processor, 40 gigabytes of storage, and 2 gigabytes of memory. Pay attention right here, it's actually limited to 10 hours per month. So if this is something that you want to use for an extended period of time, then this plan, this light plan, might not be for you. But any of the other plans here, the basic or the pro plans, they actually include unlimited use, so you are not limited to just 10 hours. The basic plan will also give you 1 processor, 40 gigs of storage, and 2 gigs of RAM, essentially the exact same specs you see here, but without the 10 hours per month cap, so you can actually use this as much as you want. And then the Shells Pro instance includes 4 processors, 160 gigabytes of storage, and 8 gigs of RAM at $36.95 US per month. Now, something to compare this to is Linode, for example. They offer a VPS instance that also has 4 processors and 8 gigs of RAM for $40 a month. And the thing is, they offer Linux instances, so there's nothing stopping you from installing a desktop environment and then making that available via VNC or something like that, or X2Go. You could definitely create your own cloud solution if you'd like to do that, but this solution is going to be a few dollars cheaper per month, or actually more than a few dollars cheaper per month if you factor in the cost of backups. So you may want to consider the service if you are looking for a dedicated remote desktop solution. Now, all things considered, this is a new service, so of course there's going to be some potential quirks here and there. And we saw that with Windows performing a bit slower than Linux distributions such as Ubuntu, for example. But then again, operating systems do perform a bit differently from one to another, so that just goes without saying anyway. That's the nature of the beast when it comes to computing. But there are some quirks in addition to that. For example, on the iPad app, I noticed that the bar, or whatever you call that, at the top of the iPad window was overlaid on top of the panel on Ubuntu, for example. So there's a few little bugs to work out here and there, but the service has come a long way. And if you are looking for a solution to run a particular operating system or a specific app on top of your Linux installation, or maybe you just want Ubuntu on your iPad, for example, then I feel like this is a great solution to check out. You definitely should check it out. Now, normally this is where I would tell you I have an affiliate link if you want to support the channel. But as of the time I'm recording this video, I don't have that yet because, again, they are not sponsoring this video. But if you guys have a good opinion of this service, then I might reach out to them and ask them to provide me with an affiliate link you can use to support the channel. And if that happens, I'll add it to the description below. It's not going to be there today as of the time I'm releasing this video to you guys, but it could be something that I will offer in the future if all goes well and you guys seem to like it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of this service. Have you had a chance to try it out yet? What did you think of it? Let me know. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say about shells. In the meantime, definitely subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.